Great Expectations by Charles Dickens is a novel and a film directed by Mike Newell and produced in 2012. It explores the expectations and growth of a young boy named Pip whose fate holds both prosperity and misfortune. The story begins with Pip living in England during the 1900s near lamentable marshes and a small home. He lives under the false consciousness of his older sister's prospects about his potential failures and evil tendencies that may occur if he does not follow her specific instructions. Meanwhile, they live with her husband Joe, a blacksmith who offers Pip an apprenticeship to work alongside him. He sends him off to meet Miss Havisham, a woman with an ardent misandry caused by her ex-husband's deception. The story contains a motif of unrequited love, which essentially integrates itself into Pip's internal conflict of being unable to pursue Estella, Miss Havisham's daughter. He begins his laborious quest to seek out wealth and entice Estella into marrying him. Several years pass, and Pip and Joe live together following the death of Mrs. Joe. However, Pip's insecurities derived from the distress of his sister's constant scolding lingers in his personal unconscious. Soon enough, Hope arrives at Pip's doorstep when Mr. Jaggers, Miss Havisham's lawyer, comes over to tender a position for him as a gentleman. That aspect of Pip's eagerness for wealth comes into play when a peripetia in the plot occurs and Pip transitions from a timid proletariat to a conceited bourgeoisie. Whilst struggling with his shadow that is provoked by a capitalistic society, he also progressively objectifies Estella, who obeys her mother's commands. Miss Havisham exploits Pip's tenacious attempts at endearing Estella by forcing her to spurn him. This projection that she inflicts upon Pip is based on her unresolved hardship from the day that her fiancé had left her. The novel and the film portray the situation differently, considering the audience, form, and media conventions. In the following scene, Pip expresses his affection for Estella to his friend Herbert. In the novel, Herbert is related to Miss Havisham through familial relations and interrupts Pip to explain the cause of her indifferent attitude. Likewise, the film also takes a phallocentric narrative as he retells Miss Havisham's account of the events that had occurred on her wedding day, but leaves out details such as the second half of the story about her past with her brother. Regardless, unlike the novel, the film concentrates on the betrayal of her brother as he is the root cause of the situation.
Now, Miss Havisham met a certain man, and she loved this man devotedly, passionately, idolized him, and soon they were engaged. He persuaded her to buy her half-brother's share of the brewery at an immense price, so that when he was her husband, he could hold and manage it all. Well, the happy day arrived. The wedding dresses were bought, the wedding tour planned out, the wedding guests were invited, my parents among them. The feast was laid out, a great bride cake made. And the groom wrote her a letter. And she received a letter from her brother, Arthur.
And she was dressing for marriage?
At 20
minutes to 9. Of course. All those stock clocks.
It was a conspiracy between the groom and her brother to defraud Miss Havisham and break her heart. And in that they most surely succeeded.
This scene illustrates the context of the characters and how they reflect the nature of the psyche. Both Pip and Miss Havisham have great expectations, which disrupt their ideologies and develop their archetypes as tragic heroes. The use of light animates the scene to make it appear as though it is a flashback. The novel depicts Sada's house, Miss Havisham's home, as having yellow walls and producing a cold feeling, whereas in the novel there is no mention of the setting in the very same scene. The light and dark imagery creates pathetic fallacy that intensifies the scene. The brightness is featured as soon as a swift transition occurs from the present to past memory, giving it a faded image, metaphorically representing Miss Havisham's current lack of forgiveness and ability to see men in the same way that she once had. Upon realizing that she had been a victim of fraud, the camera zooms out and the scene appears to be distorted. These effects can juxtapose her state of mind and the memory that becomes integrated into her repressed thoughts. As well, the transition to dimmer lighting reveals her new personality and the beginning of her shadow, which is evident when she torments men through the use of her daughter. Patently, the themes of the novel are expressed differently in the film. Charles Dickens' sophisticated diction conveys a more mature audience, such as the young adult category. It emphasizes the psychoanalytical perspective more in depth, while the film can be intended for any age category, considering the Marxist lens. The elegant setting includes antique items such as the grandfather clock, and the costumes worn by the actors are historical pieces that signify wealth and denote the era of the 1800s. A child watching the film may still be intrigued and understand the internal troubles of the characters, seeing that the human race's hamartia is the excessive commodification of goods and higher popularity status. There is a parallel between Pip's expectations and those of the male figures in the scene. Pip is wearing aesthetic attire and strives to succeed within the capitalistic world, bringing Joe dejection after he leaves with the intent of earning money. With more discussion on wardrobe, Miss Havisham wears the wedding dress that later becomes tarnished by both her emotions and the decaying of the growing years. The dress symbolizes the loss of innocence, again referencing her shadow, as well as death, an extended metaphor for her surrendering of hope. The role of Miss Havisham is played by actress Helena Bonham Carter, successful in prior roles with various evil archetypes, such as the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland and Bellatrix Lestrange in Harry Potter. She effectuates the story's principal message of the lack of individuation caused by eluding the consequences of high expectations and being unable to accept herself and others in all circumstances. Meanwhile, Jeremy Irvine plays Pip and achieves the idea of maturity and self-recognition as he ages, foiling Miss Havisham, who is already too late to find individuation. His innocent face complements his character's curiosity and consciousness. Again, in terms of the film's media conventions, the use of music and sound effects is beneficial to the analysis of the story.
The share of the brewery at an immense price, so that when he was her husband, he could hold and manage it all. Well,
the initial sound of the harp sets an atmosphere of serenity and wonder, preparing the audience for the pathos that they are about to feel. Simultaneously, it has an ancient vibe to it, connoting to the persistence of the past, as Miss Havisham's grudge had already been mentioned.
the happy day arrived. The wedding dresses were bought, the wedding tour planned out.
The speed of the song also changes just as Herbert starts to retell significant events. The song resembles an event spiraling out of control due to the inconsistent notes being played, building anticipation for the audience. It foreshadows an appalling occurrence until the letter is given to Miss Havisham.
A letter. And she received a letter from her brother, Arthur.
When she was dressing for marriage.
And an eerie tone is elicited from the music. Another variance between the novel and the film is the letter. It does not exist within the novel, but the purpose of this prop in the film is to symbolize the truth of what Miss Havisham had been missing all along. Once she reads the letter, she cries loudly, and the music holds a prolonged note and descends into a chilling, dark melody. The greatest distinction between the novel and the film, Great Expectations, is the point of view. The novel takes a first-person subjective, using more literary techniques to explicate the human nature and the mind. The film, however, exhibits the same idea but in the third-person objective, using technology and other factors to feed the audience with a familiar taste or conceivable feeling and/or memory. Great Expectations is a work of art that portrays feminism, Marxism, and unquestionably the theories of psychoanalytical notions.